Welcome to Sinkowitz, hosted by the fearless Linda Sinkowitz. She's syncing you up with the latest in election integrity, from breaking headlines to critical updates you won't hear anywhere else. With Linda, it's facts first as she leads the fight for one vote for one legal voter. Stay informed, stay empowered. Let's jump in.
Hi, welcome to Sinkowitz. My name is Linda Sinkowitz. I am the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. You are actually watching us on OBBM Network TV, so thank you very much. This week, my guest is Michael Quinn Sullivan. He is from Texas Scorecard. We are going to be talking about a number of states. Florida is our first one, then Georgia, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Texas, and our election and voting terms. Abandoned ballot is our word for the week. We'll go to our trivia, and then we have national information and our vote notes. So why don't we get right to it with Michael Quinn Sullivan?
Great to be with you, Linda.
I truly appreciate your being a guest here on Sinkowitz. As I had told you before we came on, I have been following you for well over a year. Now, Texas Scorecard, you put out every day a newsletter about things that are going on in Texas. So we would like you to talk about your organization, how you got started, and let's go from there.
Yeah, so Texas Scorecard focuses principally on state and local government in the Lonestar State. We only look at federal government to the extent to which our alien masters in Washington, D.C. Are making it difficult for Texans to govern themselves. So for the most part, we're looking at Texas government day in and day out. My joke is that the map of the world boils down to this: Texas and not Texas. There are some people who are closer to Texas and further from Texas, but that's generally how I view the world. So it's nice, though, to get to visit with you and not Texas. Nice to be with you. But no, we've been around as a standalone organization since 2019, but Texas Scorecard actually started in 2015 as part of a broader group of organizations that I started starting back in about 2006. But Texas Scorecard, our objective is to make sure citizens in the Lonestar State are better informed so that they can then be more effective as citizens. I think there's this unfortunate trend that we've seen in culture. The idea, I think it was a Heritage Foundation book years ago about how we're entertaining ourselves to death. The idea that people are being numbed with a lack of either good information, relevant information, or actionable information, instead of just being entertained, and sometimes entertained with news. We as citizens need to reclaim that sense of the citizens being in charge, which is what our founding fathers envisioned. But the only way we can be in charge is by demanding that we are well informed so we can make the right decisions for our republic.
Okay, as we're talking about Texas Scorecard, would you like to tell the audience how they can actually get your newsletter?
Yeah, so folks can check us out at texasscorecard.com. They can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I guess it's called X now, sorry. Old habits. X and Facebook and YouTube and I think the new TikTok and all those Instagram, all those places. I'm a print guy. I was a newspaper reporter coming out of Texas A&M, and so I think of the world in print and in words, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, written at about a 7th grade level. But in the 21st century, of course, we also need to be providing things where people are. And as you know, by the fact that you do this show, people like video content, that like podcasts. So we try to provide all those kind of avenues of reaching Texans where they are so that they can be better informed and therefore more effectively engaged.
And I'll tell you, the information you put in there is all across the state of Texas. You have educational things. There's always something about Attorney General Paxton on who he's going after. One of the interesting things, I know, we talk election stuff, but it all incorporates into everything that we do, is what is that Muslim compound that was being built? And now they have some serious issues.
I lost you there. I'm so sorry, Linda. I think my earpiece knocked out on me there.
Oh, okay. So I've seen recently they had that Muslim compound that they were trying to build. And then you had a law passed that said, basically only Americans can own Texas land. But it's gotten really interesting.
Yes.
Reading about it.
Yes, we had a couple things going at play there over the past 15 years in Texas and around the country. We've seen China step in, buying up large tracts of land. China primarily, but also other individuals and entities affiliated with foreign governments. China is particularly concerning because China has been buying up land near military installations, not often not directly abutting, but close enough that they can use over-the-horizon mapping off of windmills and things like that to get down to half-inch or even quarter-inch resolution, which to you and me might not mean much, but someone understands that over-the-horizon mapping technology and imaging technology, you can learn a lot about the equipment, the personnel, and the training going on at those facilities. So the legislation that was passed and signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott requires that there be some due diligence, prohibits the purchase of that land by specifically China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and one or two others. But the big offender, of course, being China. At the same time, you have seen a move, and this is kind of where a friend of mine likes to say, Linda, that our strengths, they're always our weaknesses. And the things that that we're strong at are often can be turned against us pretty quickly. And for us, particularly us in Texas, property is about as close to sacred as you can get. John Locke, life, liberty, and property were those things that you had an inalienable right to. Thomas Jefferson spun it to the pursuit of happiness, equating happiness with owning property, being secure in your possessions. And so that strength of respecting property rights, though, is where we have seen some radical Islamicists trying to build what amount to Sharia compounds. That's what Greg Abbott calls them, Sharia compounds, where they a very skewed version of property rights that they can use to keep to enforce their version of Sharia law and other things on those big compounds. Things that are at odds with American jurisprudence and with our notion of civil society. So the biggest of those is in North Texas, where Attorney General Ken Paxton just very recently announced his findings that the developers of this property had engaged in both procedural and legal violations as part of their spin up for this big compound. And then lastly, you have out in West Texas the strangest story that I think I've ever come across, and that deals with a fellow from Indiana.
Loving
no
County.
From Texas. Yeah, a guy with
Loving
no
County.
connection to Texas who's bought land and now inviting people to move to Loving County. I expect no one to know where Loving County is. It's in far West Texas, population 65. All right, so he's trying to convince Democrat activists from out of state to move to Loving County, where he is going to build himself a Democratic base from which to run for office. More importantly, though, Loving County is one of the wealthiest counties in the state because it sits right on top of the Permian Basin. So a whole lot of oil and gas revenues coming from that he proposes to turn into, I guess, some sort of socialist nirvana or something or other. So Ken Paxton is also, and other officials are looking at that problem in West Texas.
And he plans,
crazy stuff going on in the Lone Star State.
Yeah, and he plans on changing the name of the county to his last name.
Yes, that's my favorite part of of this crazy story. That's actually my favorite part. The Loving County would be renamed in this guy's view of the world to Tanner County because that's his last name. Look, I'll tell you what, if it's actually that easy, I might get in on this. I think it'd be great to have Sullivan County, but I couldn't move to Indiana though. I'm sure it's a lovely place, but I don't do
Mhm.
well in cold weather.
Yeah, and just so people know, Texas, you've got what, 264 counties in Texas.
Yeah,
Tex
we have a lot of counties in Texas. Counties are agencies of state government, and Texas counties do a lot more than counties in other states do. We have a layered approach, which I think is about a 50-50 split in around the country on how counties are treated. In some states, cities are not actually in counties. Now, the counties are areas outside of cities. In Texas, and again, about half the country, counties are layered on top of cities. So you don't have that division and that you find in other places. So counties play a really pivotal role. But because of the size of the geographic size of the state, as well as the size of our population, we have a lot of counties. And there's a great song by a Texas musician named Brian Burns, where he goes through naming all of the county seats, and it's kind of set to an old Johnny Cash song. So if folks want to check it out, it's called Miles and Miles of Texas. It's a great song by Brian Burns.
Right, and one of the other things that's going on there is that Democrats could vote in Republican primaries and vice versa, and that's something that's, I believe, is in the courts right now or being looked at.
Yes, so this is a long-standing state law. You have to go back to the early 20th century, where you had almost no Republicans in Texas. The Democrats, the Democratic Party, Texas has always been a pretty reliable one-party state. There's always been factions within that one party, right? And so in the early days of the 20th century, you had the branch of Democrats who really kind of thought slavery was okay and wanted to keep people oppressed and other things, and another branch who said, hey, this isn't good. So the group that yearned for the days of slavery, that group of Democrats has kind of stayed kind of the overwhelming number of Democrats in Texas. They pushed to have the state pay for the county parties, to pay for those parties' primaries. And so Texas, kind of unique in the country, the state government actually pays for the Republicans and the Democrats' primaries, provides all the mechanisms for selecting their nominees, all that kind of stuff. The catch for that has been that the parties cannot deny someone the ability to run in their primary, and cannot challenge someone showing up and voting. That challenging to show up and voting came out of a Supreme Court case back in the 1940s. So as a result, this is a long-standing thing in Texas, where people can show up the day of the primary and pick the party's nominee without having any relationship to that party. The Republican Party has been trying to change that, because what we've seen as the Republicans taken control, you've seen a number of instances in Texas, most notably in 2024, where our now former Speaker of the Texas House, a guy named Dade Phelan, he was being challenged from the right in his primary. He was pushed into a runoff. In that runoff election, you saw close to 2,000 people who'd had no Republican primary voting history, but had lots of Democrat voting primary history. Those folks showed up at the polls, and Dade Phelan won by 600 votes. So it's no one looks at that and thinks, oh, these 2,000 people came and voted for the more conservative candidate. Everyone gets the joke.
Yeah.
And that's happened in race after race around the state. And so the Republican Party for about 10 years has been trying to close the primary. Of course, the politicians want to keep the system as it is. It's kind of understandable. They know how to play the game as it is currently set up. That's how they got elected. So a lot of the incumbents, a lot of the office holders have been resistant to that change. So this year, the Republican Party of Texas filed a lawsuit saying that, and kind of based off other court rulings around the country, as well as a couple Supreme Court rulings, that no, Republicans have the freedom of association, the right to not have Democrats picking their candidates. Now, look, I'm a fighting Texas Aggie. Our big nemesis in state is the University of Texas. I would absolutely love it if our football coach could pick the starting lineup for the UT game. I would love for our guys to be able to pick who UT plays in any given time. That would make the game so much better for us, right?
Yep.
But that's not the way the real world works, right? And so this lawsuit was filed, and now Attorney General Ken Paxton has done a very unusual thing. He has stepped in on behalf of the party in their lawsuit. It's now creating kind of it's not a constitutional crisis, but certainly creating an executive branch crisis, where you see the Attorney General of Texas siding with the Republican Party, while the governor's appointee as Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, is working to keep the primary open to Democrats. So it's going to be an interesting case that it's going to be moving at the glacial speed of all federal court cases. But with enough attention on it, I think the Republicans are hoping that it will either result in the court ruling that Republicans can close their primary, or it will force Republican legislators to take action when they meet again in 2027.
Right, which is the other thing. In Texas, your legislatures are only working every 2 years.
Right.
Which is interesting. Well, I want to thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. I definitely want to have you back in the future. We do want people to make sure to get your newsletter. It is fantastic. There's so much information that is in there. And also consider donating. And one of the other things you get to do is when you have those questions, you get to vote on different questions you have. And even though I'm not from Texas, I got to tell you, I've been voting.
Excellent. I consider all like-minded people to be our fellow Texans, even if you don't happen to be in Texas. We're glad to have you as part of our big Texas family.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. So here's been Michael Quinn Sullivan from Texas Scorecard. Thank you so much. We're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Sinkowitz. I'm Linda Sinkowitz, the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. And once again, I want to thank Michael Quinn Sullivan from Texas Scorecard, who has been our guest. Fabulous organization. You definitely need to get his newsletter. It's great. All right, so we're going to go on to our first state of this week, and it is Florida. This is from WCTV Eyewitness News from October 8th. Florida Secretary of State seeks funding for statewide election audit system. So the Florida Secretary of State, Cord Byrd, will ask the legislature to fund a new statewide election audit system for another layer of security. Byrd outlined his proposal to the members of the House Government Operations Subcommittee in preparation of the 2026 election, emphasizing the need for uniform election procedures in all of their 67 counties. This would examine results before certification for potential issues. And a bill is expected to be filed in the next couple of weeks. I think that's excellent. Now we're going to go on to Georgia. We're keeping it down south right now. This source is from the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, from October 9th, 2025. Raffensperger applauds General Assembly for considering federal election reform. The Republican Secretary of State commended the Blue Ribbon Committee on Election Procedures for his call to amend the NVRA, which is the National Voter Registration Act. He promotes the list maintenance that his office has been doing for elections as a national model. He's urging Congress to implement photo ID for all federal elections and a ban on non-citizen voting in all elections. Quote, next, we can propose a constitutional amendment banning non-citizen voting and require photo ID using real ID for all forms of voting for every federal election in the country. He believes in common sense reforms, including updates to the NVRA to enhance security and public confidence in the registration process. Oh, yeah. So now we got 2 states that are actually going in the right direction. Now we're going to go on to Iowa. For all of you out there, that's sort of in the middle of the country. This source is from SEIA, which is the Southeast Iowa Video Network, from October 8th, 2025. Fairfield election worker recounts nasty experience. Okay, so in Iowa, they had an election worker in Fairfield said she and other poll workers suffered a series of unpleasant experiences, from computer problems to voters with a temper. Carol Carlson appeared before the Board of Supervisors on Monday, October 6th, to speak about the special runoff election on September 30th to fill the vacancy for Fairfield City Council's Ward 3. She said in 35 years, she was never so scared. Usually there's 4 election workers, but one had a medical emergency, and then his wife, who was also working there, left with him, leaving only 2 poll workers. On top of that, the computer kept malfunctioning. At one point, she called Jefferson County Elections Commissioner Abby Decline, and she could hear a man yelling at poll workers, and she rushed to the Nazarene Family Center where the elections was being conducted. Carol begged a woman that came in that had experience with the polls to please help. She did, and she later had her husband, who also had experience, come in too because of the security concerns. Quote, I kept begging Abby to fire me, but she wouldn't do it. It was the craziest election I've ever worked, unquote. And I'm like, wow, they really need to have a backup plan with the poll workers. I mean, I'm guessing it's not that big a county or election polling location when you only have 4 workers that are running the entire thing, and to lose half of them and not have a backup plan. So I am sure they are working on that now. Now we're going to go on to Pennsylvania. This is from Spotlight, PA, on October 9th, 2025. Duplicate ballots issued to voters in at least 4 Pennsylvania counties ahead of November elections. It's almost like we feel like we're on repeat. This just goes on and on and on. Every time before an election, it doesn't matter what state it is, there's always these issues. So they're saying it's just a handful of Pennsylvania counties mistakenly issued duplicate mail ballots to just a few of their voters. Why that happened is unclear, and the state and county officials are each giving different explanations. But oh, no worries, they said. No votes would have been counted twice. Yeah, you're right. Sure. So Jonathan Marks, he is the Deputy Secretary of the Commonwealth, said at least some of the issues came from, oh, get this, user error. Emily Cook, the election director in Luzerne County, told the WVIA that the cause was an unknown problem from the state election management system known as SURE. Hey, we talked about that SURE last week and the Supreme Court ruling that had to do with that system. And now we're seeing, oh, there's a problem. So, quote, assuming that the state's excuse is accurate, how broken is the SURE system if you cannot safeguard against a county inadvertently sending two labels for the same voter, said Lorraine County Manager Romilda Cracamo when she told the Citizen Voice on Wednesday, quote, there's nothing sure about the SURE system. Unbelievable. Like I said, we see this going on everywhere. There's got to be training. And of course, like again, the county officials, they have a different explanation about the problem than the state people. And everybody's going, there's no problem. I don't care if it's one ballot that was sent in duplicate that makes it through the system. We need to make sure, again, that it's one vote for one legal voter. And don't tell me the system is going to catch it if a second ballot goes through. You've already told us that there shouldn't be any problems with your system. And here we go again. Okay. That was just my commentary. So now we're going on to the state of Texas. This is from Fox 7 in Austin on October 8th, 2025. These Texas GOP reps could be banned from 2026 election. The Texas GOP will meet to consider censuring 10 of the Republican representatives, including House Speaker Dustin Burrows. Now, the politicians, other than the Speaker, face the possible removal from the 2026 primary ballot. They're accused of not properly representing the party's belief during the last legislative session. This is in regards to there is a GOP Rule 44, which allows Republicans to be penalized for failing to properly represent their party's beliefs. 3 potential penalties are on the table. A 3 of 5 vote could result in 1 or more being implemented. What it means is if a representative is successfully censured, they can be prevented from running for office during 2 years following the penalty. The GOP could also run, quote, voter education, unquote, media in the rep's district that explains their party violations. So what you're going to want to do is go to Texas Scorecard because they will tell you the results of that meeting. And yeah, there's a few of them that did get censured. Wow. Texas is pretty strict on stuff. There's a lot more that had gone on during Texas during this last legislative session than the Democrats, hopping on planes and taking off. There was a number of things that had gone on there. I think that's kind of an interesting rule or law. I like it. So now we are going to go on to our elections and voting terms. Now, this source is from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and I checked this on October 10th, 2025. What is an abandoned ballot? Well, a ballot that the voter did not place in the ballot box or record as cast on a direct electronic recording device, which are called the DREs, before leaving the polling place. That means somebody who left a ballot just lying around and did not properly put it into whatever device it's being supposed to be put into, so it had not been counted. Now, other people can't go and pick it up and just slide it in. It's considered an abandoned ballot. So our trivia question for this week All right, hang on here. What New Mexico county voted for the winner of every U.S. presidential election from 1952 through 2016? The longest active of any county for years, but it had its streak broken in 2020. So think about that. We are going to go to a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Sinkowitz. I'm Linda Sinkowitz I am the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. You're watching us on OBBM Network TV. Now, we just left you with our trivia question before the break. Our trivia question was, or is, what New Mexico county voted for the winner of every U.S. presidential election from 1952 through 2016, the longest active of any county for years, but had its streak broken in 2020? And the answer is Valencia. I think that's really cool. I mean, if you wanted to know who was going to win, you would go to Valencia County because they had been right for so many years. And I'm so glad that their streak was broken. Well, not really. So they were right in 2016. Yay. Wrong in 2020. Well, they were actually technically right. We're not going to go there. That's another thing we're not going to be talking about is the 2020 election stuff. We know what happened. We have to move on from that. All right, so now we're going to go to a national info. This is from Financial Content on October 8th of 2025. West Virginia grassroots group sparks statewide momentum in their fight for election integrity. Now, a growing grassroots coalition is shaking up the conversation of election security and transparency in West Virginia. Now, Citizens for West Virginia Election Integrity, C4WVEI, is already making a significant impact on policy, process, and public awareness. Now, they facilitated the establishment of the West Virginia Election Integrity Caucus in August of 2024. They reviewed every election-related bill in 2025 legislative session. They endorsed 27 bills and opposed 2. 8 endorsed bills passed both chambers, including a ban on ranked choice voting, yay, and a requirement for voter ID at the polls. Yay! There's a lot of yays in there. Both opposed bills were successfully defeated, including a bill that would have removed a voter's right to photograph their completed ballot. I didn't even know we were able to do that. Well, I'm glad they are able to do it to make sure your ballot made it through. They had an operational impact. They launched a registration audit center to detect and correct invalid or duplicate voter registrations. Partnered with national watchdogs like True the Vote, Election Integrity Network, and I think I know this other group, Fight Voter Fraud as well. So yes, we had been helping them out with a number of things in West Virginia. And they've also presented documented cases of election fraud and anomalies to their West Virginia election officials. They're doing so much more. So if you're in West Virginia and you want to know about their efforts, their email is citizens, then the number 4, WV electionintegrity@gmail.com. Their website is www.citizens, the number 4, WV electionintegrity.org. They're fabulous. And even through Secretary of State's office and all of them, I've had the pleasure and opportunity of being able to work with them on a few things. And West Virginia is one of the states that is really trying hard to make sure they've got one vote for one legal voter. So kudos to West Virginia and their Secretary of State, Warner. Yay. I like saying yay. I like when we have a lot of yay things going on. So now we're going to go to our vote notes. Now, vote notes, as most of you know that watch this program, means there's a lot more to the story. And instead of us, boring you with 10 minutes or even 5 minutes of talking about the articles themselves, you can go to our website and click on the link, and it will bring you to the entire story. So this one is California will no longer allow payments to induce people to vote to boost turnout, sometimes selectively, on state elections. This is crazy. When I read the story, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So the overall thing is that now in the wake of Elon Musk's controversial lotteries to get people to vote in 2024, California passed a new law to codify in their election code section 18107.5 that bans the practice of payments from turnout. But they didn't remove the law that allows the payments in the code. Honestly, that's crazy. If you're going to put a law in that says no payments, and you have a law already on the books that says, hey, you can bribe anybody you want, you need to take the old one out. So now they have two conflicting laws. We'll see what happens with that. Why not have more stuff that's going to wind up going to court? But I'll tell you right off the bat, I don't know about you, but I think paying anybody to come out and vote should be illegal. And I believe in most states it is. It's considered a bribe. And personally, I don't care whether it is a slice of pizza. If one party is giving another party food or some other compensation monetarily or whatever, it should not be done. It's another thing if you have tents far away that, everybody can get, some water and a slice of pizza. But if it is primarily directed by one party or the other party to induce, and this is what's done at UConn here in the state of Connecticut, to induce college students or anybody else to vote for a particular party, that is a bribe. Just can't do it, really. Giving money, giving food, giving whatever. No. So the other thing that's going on right now in California, speaking of the West Coast. So there's a Proposition 50 that Newsom has brought up to try to counteract the redistricting that had gone on in Texas. And there's a lot of legal challenges and everything else that are going to be happening from this anyway. So what has gone on now with their little wink in California is when they sent out the ballots, and they have all mail-in ballots there, and it's a yes or no question. Well, what they did was they have a hole that if you fill in no on your ballot and slide it in, you can see that it was filled in as a no from the outside. Now, do you really think that nobody's going to pay attention to that in the processing centers when they may not know your name, but they know how you voted? Seriously, we are not that stupid. We know what you've done. And earlier today, I saw a story on that as well. And you know what the excuse is for those holes? Well, that's so when blind people, when they have to sign the ballot, they'll know exactly where to sign. But what's interesting about that is that there's no hole or anything else on the ballot itself inside. So how are they going to know where to fill it in? That's a ridiculous excuse. So I have no idea what they're going to be doing with this, but if anybody wants to think that there's potential fraud that is going to go on with this, I think it's going to be more than potential. You have just shown people what the vote is going to be from that particular ballot. And it's one of those things, it's just like, oh, here's another no. Disappears. That is not how we want elections to be run. And honestly, California election officials that did that in putting the holes in there, because there's also a hole, I believe, that would be for the yes vote as well. But I definitely saw the no, and you're going to be seeing that graphic as well. It was done intentionally. Absolutely intentionally. And this is not something we want to have going on with our elections. So I hope people are paying attention to that story and how that is going to be rectified to make sure the people are having their vote counted when they sent it in. It's not one thing, it's another. They come up with something unique. But again, this has at least been pointed out and caught ahead of the election. So again, I want to thank everybody who watches our program. Sinkowitz, all we want to be able to do is educate you on a number of things that are going on across the country to do with elections. If you have any ideas or thoughts or know about stories, that particular story actually had been sent to me. I just want to thank Tim for sending it to me last week. I really appreciate that, so we can pass it on. But again, if you have some stories you want us to talk about, or you have some comments about our program, just send them to info@fightvoterfraud.org. And yes, we read every single email that comes in. We absolutely appreciate the feedback and even the stuff that's not so nice. But overall, we're finding that a lot of you really enjoy our program. If you think of any other segments you'd like us to add, we're open. We love new ideas. But we also want to make sure of election integrity across the country and that you're educated on what is going on. I try to stay in the center. I think I did a pretty good job this week. Sometimes it's really difficult. But again, if you want to have a data analysis done on your county of potential double voters, you can go to our website, fightvoterfraud.org, fill out the form, and we'll get it to you within a couple of days. You do your own due diligence. We also have an option of getting trained on how to do the deep dive into actually proving the people have, quote, potentially. We have to say potential because we're not law enforcement, but we'll show you how to do the deep dive. And I want all of you who are sitting there thinking, what can I do to help my local elections? First of all, make sure you vote. Absolutely make sure you vote. And if you want, check the list within your county or on your street on people who are registered to vote. And if you recognize anybody who you know has moved or died, because I'll tell you what, they do vote. Let your county or your city or your town election officials know That's one small thing that you can actually do. Support your candidates, but definitely vote in your November election. Once again, thank you so much for watching Sinkowitz. And you're watching us on OBBM Network TV. We're also on Rumble. We're on YouTube. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.